Hello there. Welcome to the second in the series of videos which I'm using just to outline, summarise the SPIDERCIA framework and the book I've written around this and solution architecture. So this video is going to cover a number of different areas around solution architecture role, the artifacts which are produced from solution architecture, and delivering solution architecture in Agile context. Just before I go on, so a little bit about SPIDERCIA. So this is a book I've written to provide an outline of professional solution architecture, the context it sits within, and how to follow this framework I've created called SPIDERCIA to implement solution architecture. So SPIDERCIA is a framework which covers the discipline of solution architecture, the people, process, and requirements which drive solution architecture, and then a series of topics around implementing solution architecture, so information system engineering, which is the application part of solution architecture. And then there's the deployment and infrastructure part, so how you deploy the applications, how you examine and test applications to ensure they meet the solution architecture and the associated business need, how to govern overall solution and delivery process, so how to ensure fit for purpose, risks are managed, etc. Solution automation using now well-established methods such as continuous integration, deployment, and DevOps, and how to operate the solution in life, all delivered using an Agile delivery mindset. A little bit about me. So I'm an experienced IT professional, worked many years in the industry. I've covered many different business domains, and I've covered all the IT life cycle. But solution architecture is probably where my main passion is, my main experience is, and something I really enjoy doing and like to. And I've written this book to try to provide whatever pearls of wisdom I've gathered over the many years of doing this discipline. So now we're going to get into the role of a solution architect. And this diagram summarizes the challenging world of a solution architect. You've got to work as a solution architect within many constraints. You've got the constraints of the enterprise architecture. So this is meeting, aligning with strategy and roadmaps and standards. You've got business constraints, so you usually have requirements, business requirements obviously, but business regulations as well, depending on which industry you're working within. You've got project constraints, timelines, always budgets, always costs, and usually resource and skill constraints. And then you've got technologies constraints, especially if you're if this is a brownfield application, as in you're taking forward an existing solution. So you've got legacy systems to deal with, and even if it's a greenfield, as in a brand new solution, and you might be using new technology, well, there's often constraints around the maturity of that technology. So there's lots of constraints to contend with, and there's also lots of stakeholders to work with. So this diagram outlines some of the key interactions you'll have as a solution architect. And the solution architect should embrace interaction, should embrace collaboration. And I'll say it many times in these videos, and I've said it many times in the book, that you should not work in isolation. It should be the last thing you do as a solution architect. You're there to bring together a solution using different stakeholders with different knowledge. So some of the stakeholders include subject matter experts who know the particular domain you're working in at an expert level, the business stakeholders who are driving the business solution, and from a business process, business requirements perspective, people that are running the solution, they've got a stake in it, they need to have a solution that they can effectively operate, people delivering the solution, and of course enterprise architects who will be interested in making sure your solution aligns with the wider enterprise architecture. There's the people that will be delivering the solution, so there'll be designers, developers, etc. And vendors you'll be working with closely with the solution as well. So this is by no means complete. These are kind of the generic stakeholders that I often come across, but you can see there sort of snapshot of the series of interactions that you should have as a solution architect. And there's many different areas that I would encourage solution architects to focus on in terms of their skill sets, their capabilities, but probably the two most important are communication, organization. Communication is key because, as I've shown in the previous slide there, you're going to be dealing with lots of people. So you're going to have to communicate well, either in terms of listening, getting their inputs, or presenting in terms of giving your outputs, and usually a combination of both. And you need to think about the what, where, when, how, who, why of that communication. Really, really important to have a communication strategy. And then there's the organization aspects. You're going to have a lot of data coming in from those stakeholders I've mentioned before. You're going to have a lot of issues, constraints, etc. to contend with while you go through the solution architecture process. And you're going to have a lot of outputs as well in terms of artifacts. So that all needs organization. All this different information, data, artifacts, etc. needs a lot of organization. So I always think a solution architect that is strong in the communication, strong in organization, is well on their way to being a very strong professional solution architect. So next, again, I'll shamelessly say there's more detail in the book, but this is a summary of the responsibilities of a solution architect. They have to deal with requirements, stakeholders, they have to create a vision of the architecture and communicate that effectively. They have to make sure that's aligned with the enterprise architecture, and they have to be strong on documenting that architecture. Later on this I'll cover solution architecture artifacts. Make sure there's a governance process to govern the solution architecture, and make sure they've got a process for improving the architecture. A solution architect's job is never done, as I always say. There's always improvements you could make. So while you're working on the solution, you should have a process and ensure you're amenable to making improvements. A covered solution communication, really important that you have a strategy to communicate inwards and outwards in terms of listening and presenting the solutions and validating solutions and working with delivering solutions. There's also an element of coaching, mentoring people that you'll be working with, either working in your solution architecture team or a delivery development team, etc. You're the person that's bringing this together, so you should have skills on coaching and mentoring people you're going to work with to deliver the solutions. And there's different solution architects have different views. Prototyping can mean paper-based. Quite a lot of solution architects like myself quite like getting hands-on as well. So new technology, new requirements, new solutions. Quite often it's good to be hands-on in prototyping. So here we cover the skills. So and what I call needs. So the skills are your capabilities to deliver solution architecture. So from the architecture itself, obviously you should have a big business head on. You understand business problems, business analysis as well, analytical to break things down, technical, absolutely. But I wouldn't expect a solution architecture to be a technical expert in everything, and you should also be aware that if you are a technical expert in one part of the solution, that should not be the only focus of the solution. You still need to have the end-to-end mindset the broad mindset. And I often quite see people focusing too much on what they know in terms of their technical specialism to the detriment of other aspects of the solution they don't know so well. So technical knowledge, very, very good, but also to bear in mind, don't just focus on what you know technically. And you should have a good delivery head on you and work with delivery managers, program managers, etc., to break things down in terms of timelines, costs, etc. And you should be a leader of the solution. You're there to not just create a solution as in a document or wherever makes up the solution architecture, but also see through that solution to the end, and that requires a certain element of leadership. And solutions aren't delivered on their own, and very rare a solution architect will deliver his own solution on his own. So you have to work within the team. And again, think back to those stakeholders I mentioned. A lot of team working required here. And communication, said it many times. You need to communicate and listen, present well. And yeah, that comes with a certain amount of soft skills as well. And knowledge management, you're going to have to cover many different areas of knowledge, be the business, technical, etc. So really important that you have an ability to organize that knowledge. Also alongside skills are needs. So this means what you need from the business to do your job. So you need to be empowered to make decisions and see through decisions. You need to have resources to implement solution architectures. You need access to stakeholders. So common issue is there are stakeholders, but they can't give you time or for whatever reason can't give you the information you need. So you need to access, and you need an enterprise architecture to work within. There may be certain smaller companies that might not be in a formal enterprise architecture, so you might have to improvise and almost create one on the fly, if you like. But there needs to be some element of broad, big picture for the enterprise that your solution is going to work within. So this diagram just covers a bit more around how the solution architect role aligns to the enterprise architect. So you can be a general, you can be cloud specific, you can be application data security specialist. I think the key thing to take from this is there's lots of different roles here. Again, I go into this more detail in the book. And you need to kind of work out what particular solution architect role you may be playing. So you may be taking on multiple roles. It's quite common. Quite common. The solution architect will be the business analyst, or in cloud solutions you might be a cloud solution architect as well. So there's certain roles. It's quite important to kind of scope your role at the start of a solution architecture. So within the SPIDERCIA framework, I've outlined common roles aligned to different topics. Obviously, the solution architect works within the solution architecture topic. Business analyst would work within the people, process, requirements topic. And then you've got designers for the information systems and deployment. You've got test for testing, DevOps architects for CI/CD, CD, and DevOps, then service architects for in-life operations. These are obviously broad roles. They'll absolutely depend on your organizational design. As I've said before, solution architecture may also be the business analyst. The CI/CD DevOps lead may also be the application design lead. It'll vary, but these are kind of the broad roles and I would see working together on a solution architecture and delivery. So now we get into delivery aspects and solution architecture and specifically Agile delivery. Before we go into Agile, we've got the concept of waterfall. So this has been a traditional top-down phased approach to constructing architecture and design and delivering it through. So you can see there very much phase to phase to phase, no feedback, and which means your concept, your specification or architecture and design is implemented, but there's not much of it. There's nothing in the way of feedback or breaking it down into smaller chunks. So it's kind of a all or nothing approach. This concept of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is business-wide concept that's been there for a number of years now. But this is kind of to show that the top-down waterfall approach may have been useful for the time it was originated in the late 70s, 80s, early 80s, but things are much more dynamic, much quicker to move, and you have to be, as a business, much more flexible. So you need to, as I put here, embrace change, and you need a delivery approach which will embrace change and prepare for different alternatives and move quickly, effectively. So the Agile Manifesto, created back in 2001 now, was there to present a different approach to waterfall. So you can see there the main elements of it. But it's really around implementing solutions much more flexibly and not being overly rigid in your approach. Okay, I won't go through the Agile Manifesto principles, but you can see there's 12 principles. The Agile Manifesto itself isn't particularly large. It's quite specific around your mindset, your approach to delivering solutions. Probably the main implementation of Agile, the main Agile delivery method is Scrum. That's still probably the case. And you can see here how it breaks down solutions into sprints. That's different parts of Scrum, but the sprint's probably the main thing if I'm ever presenting Scrum, and it shows you how you break down a solution into small chunks. So you can take backlog, which effectively requirements, create parts of your solution and deliver parts of your solution in a very frequent manner, so that you're not waiting a year or more down the line to develop a solution which may be at that point out of date. There's Nexus, which is a method of scaling Scrum. So there's multiple Scrums, as you can see here. You've got multiple daily Scrums, and you've got multiple Scrum teams, so up to 9 Scrum teams. So they work together. So this is how you can build up the size of your teams to develop a solution which requires many more people. Other Scrum approaches are Scrum of Scrums, large-scale Scrum, Scrum at scale, all about taking the basic tenets of Scrum and its sprints and its backlog into higher scale, bigger projects, bigger solutions. There's also SAFE, which is the another take on Agile, quite an elaborate framework to provide, again, splitting up solutions into kind of sprints and different levels of delivery. I won't go into detail here. There's a link here. You can see Scaled Agile Framework. There's another approach to agility within a large enterprise context. And there's other approaches to this. Again, I can summarize these in the book. There's Kanban, which is kind of a first in, first out delivery method. There's disciplined agile delivery, which is kind of more of a culture than anything of delivery. Scrumban is a kind of combination of Scrum and Kanban. Extreme programming, which is kind of very flexible approach to development, and the Crystal method, which is another alternative approach. As a solution architect, it's probably important to have a view of a mindset of agility. And here are some thoughts you should have aligned to the principles of the Agile Manifesto. So things like you're going to work with lots of different people, and you're probably going to cover areas you're not familiar or comfortable with. You're going to the customers are going to drive the business needs, not yourself. And quite a lot of this thinking just is really useful to, especially if you've come from a waterfall kind of approach, just to maybe step back and think about your approach, how you work within an agile delivery approach as a solution architect. And one of the dilemmas of a solution architect in context of agility is, one side, if you don't have a clear solution architecture, how do you how do you lay out your delivery? You could lose a lot of time and effort because you haven't made up your decisions up front. But on the other side, well, you do need to be flexible, and you do need to make changes as business needs changes, as other other things you have to work with, like resources, budgets, whatever, change as well. So there's this kind of conflict, and this is kind of laid out with the common comparison of big design up front via emergent design. So big design up front kind of links to waterfall, where everything has been designed and completed, and to a certain extent you might think perfected. But that requires prediction, and we don't work in a world of full prediction. I think things do change. And then there's the concept of emergent design, where, well, you don't really do anything up front. The design will emerge as you're implementing. As quite a useful quote here, big design up front is dumb, but doing no design is even dumber. I like this from Dave Thomas, who's one of the signatories to Agile Manifesto. You do need a design, but it's how much you do up front is really the question. It's that balance. How much do you do up front? So there's lots of different takes on this, and in the book I outline this concept of sprint-based architecture development, where you will be, as a solution architect, you will be part of the sprints. You do not work outside the Agile delivery methods, so whatever you're using, be it Scrum or the variants of Scrum or Safe or whatever, but you've got to be part of the delivery, and you will do an element of architecture up front, shown in these blue boxes, and you continue doing architecture while there's implementation going on. So it's not a case of full upfront, and it's not a case of no design up front. It's a combination, and whatever fits within the delivery. So there'll be some areas that you know well, and you think you're pretty confident that is going to be the solution, and there'll be other areas you have to research and prototype or see how fits in with other solutions. So there'll be the mature part of the solution, and there'll be the much less mature part of the solution, and that aligns itself quite nicely to sprints, which may be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. But the key thing is you're part of this sprint-based approach. So that's Agile delivery, and that's the role of a solution architect. This section covers the design artifacts. Why do we need documentation? Is that not all gone with Agile? Absolutely not. You still need Agile. You still need documentation within Agile context. Very much still required. You need it to visualize and communicate the architecture. You need it to validate the solution, visualize changes to the architecture, and communicate issues. So there's many other reasons, but you do need to document your solution. But as well as you could have too much, and you'd be spending time on documentation that's not required, but you could have too little. And quite a common one's the top one here. It can be in your head, and that's not a good place to be, because if it's in your head, it's probably people think it's different from what you think it is. Many times when I've been documenting my solution, I've been refining it as I'm documenting it because it's in my head different from it is on paper. It's really important to get a balance. That's probably the key thing. We do need it to. You don't want to be wasting time documenting solutions, but well constructed documentation is worth its weight in gold. And what I outline in the book is my view of a kind of balance, especially using modeling to use the old adage, paint a picture paints 1,000 words, to communicate and outline a very clear solution without writing War and Peace. So the principles, as I mentioned, there, model first. Modeling is critical to any well-communicated solution architecture. Keep it lightweight, but keep it essential. So document what you need to document, nothing more. Make sure it's coordinated, integrated with other documentation. Really important, so you're not duplicating and overlapping too much. You're aligning with the other artifacts and documents. Make sure it's useful and valuable, and it's there in time when you need it, not far too early or far too late. And traceable, so make sure it's traceable to requirements or enterprise architecture or anything else that's kind of driving the solution. The formats may be multiple formats. Again, I make quite a big thing about models in the book. Really useful to clearly outline the details of a solution using different modeling techniques. You can use words as well and models within words. I would not frown upon Word documents, really still very useful. Use different presentation formats like I'm using here. Wikis are good, especially for things that are quite fluid and multiple people contribute to. Wireframes are good for especially user-facing items like web pages, that sort of thing. Code-generated documentation is quite useful, especially if you want to align your documentation, take it forward to actual coding and programming. And there's lots of other formats. Going to provide some recommendations for different tools within the book. So a few diagrams here which outline my suggested approach to structuring solution architecture artifacts. So I've got this one on high complexity, there's one on medium and low complexity that we'll cover in a couple of slides' time. Again, the term complexity is obviously very subjective, but generally you get the idea that there's going to be big solutions which require lots of different artifacts, and then slightly less complex ones, and then down to the level of we only need a few. So I've got some suggestions in the book about what would be high complexity in terms of sizing of solution, etc. But the basic structures, we'd have a solution architecture document called the SAD, and that provides the scope of the solutions, the big decisions, the architecturally significant decisions, they're calling them, which drive the structure of the solution. Then there's different views. I'm going to cover that in the next video around what views are, but basically different takes and different angles of a solution, different focus of a solution. And then the roadmap of where we're next on the solution. And the CRAID, which is the constraints, risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies, which are constraining or well, giving context the solution is working within. That's all linked to the enterprise architecture as well to make sure it aligns. And you can see here again, modeling really important. So this is kind of, in many cases, a kind of wrapper document around the models. The models are the key, should provide the key information, and in particular the views, which I'll go into in the next video. You might have specialist architectures at this level of complexity. You might have data, application, infrastructure, security architectures, all drilling down on specific aspects of the solution. And then you get down to the designs. So the designs are effectively the plans you implement from. So the solution architecture provides the broad, high-level view. It's not something you would take and write a program from or configure a system from. That's what the designs. The designs drill down on that level of detail to the level you can actually implement, and then you get into actually build, tests, releasing and deploying the solution. So the next diagram is slightly less complex solution. So you can see there's some stuff taken out, in particular specialist architectures. For a medium complex solution, you probably don't need those architectures. So you've really got the SAD, the models, again, all linked to the enterprise architecture and the requirements driving it. And you've got the designs. So these, again, these are the plans. The designs are the plans which you can actually implement from. And then the last part is the low complexity, where you still need a SAD. So again, you see here, even the low complexity solution would still need a solution architecture document. But you might actually include the designs within that. So it might just be effectively one big combined solution architecture and design. Sometimes I'll just call it solution design, and that is something you can actually implement from, and that kind of works so well for lower complexity solutions. Again, you're still aligning to enterprise architecture, you're still tracing back to your requirements, and you've still got models, and models still really important. But it's all effectively in one deliverable. And that's everything. So that's me covered the solution architecture role, delivering as a solution architect within an Agile context and Agile delivery methods, and the artifacts you produce within solution architecture practice. So hopefully that was useful. That's covered kind of the framework. The first two videos have covered the framework and all the elements around being a solution architect. So the next series of videos are going to go into the topics. So the 8 topics which make up SPIDERCIA, and drill down on those in a series of videos. So I think the last thing to say is, so this is the book which will provide much more detail what I've covered here, including worked examples. It's available on Amazon. I'm contactable on email and via LinkedIn. Always very keen to engage and collaborate and discuss any subjects related to solution architecture with anyone, so please just contact me. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, thanks, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.